Retribution. Retribution debuted in mid-2020 as a masked group that interrupted broadcasts to punish the system. The segments used face coverings, voice distortion, blackouts, and smashed equipment, which framed a fight against company control rather than a normal rivalry. The look and language mirrored street protests, so viewers labeled it woke because activism imagery and justice talk crowded out a clear sporting objective. The story never set a trackable goal. A trackable goal is one outcome the audience can follow, such as removing a named authority, changing a rule, or capturing a title to gain leverage. Without that endpoint, weekly segments could not build toward a finish. Members were given new aliases that broke continuity with their known identities. The show did not rebuild credibility with fast, decisive wins or a visible pecking order, so the act never felt dangerous. Mustafa Ali was revealed as the leader, and the group then signed contracts with the company they claimed to oppose. Outsiders became employees, which erased the outside versus inside tension that gave the idea its edge. Booking choices undercut the threat. Opponents changed often, feuds did not escalate, and televised losses signaled low danger. The angle-paired message first presentation with no concrete objective, a contract twist that broke its own logic, and results that never created momentum or payoff. Divas Revolution. Divas Revolution launched in mid-2015 after backlash to short matches and opened with 3 pre-made teams of 9 women, assembled by branding rather than shared history, as proof of change. The segment borrowed the language of a movement and leaned on the hashtag #GiveDivasAChanceSurge, which put the message ahead of a competitive plan. There was no single destination to chase and no central opponent to pursue, so the weekly tags felt interchangeable and never built to a decisive moment. Results settled into even trades of wins and losses, which created no status ladder. Title stakes came late and sporadically, so wins never converted into leverage. Viewers labeled the presentation woke because empowerment language and hashtag framing dominated, while the sporting aim stayed undefined. Representation was announced before it was earned through match structure and clear stakes. The angle improved when the show stopped announcing change and started booking longer singles matches in higher card slots with clean finishes. Once that shift happened, the same performers felt more credible because the format rewarded wins and advanced a defined chase, which is how television wrestling turns momentum into lasting status. And if you're into seeing wrestling history broken down like this, make sure you're subscribed. We've got plenty more moments just like this coming up. Nikki A.S.H arrived in 2021 as a self-belief superhero for younger viewers, built on the idea that anyone can be a hero. The visuals and dialogue centered on inspiration, while the show did not anchor that message to a clear sporting mission the audience could follow. She won Money in the Bank and cashed in on the next Raw, which put the title before the climb. There was no run of decisive wins to establish top-level status, so the belt read as a shortcut rather than a payoff. Match layouts did not rebuild credibility. Short television bouts and multi-person formats shared momentum and kept her from stacking clean finishes over ranked opponents. The tone aimed at children while the core audience expects grounded stakes and a named rival to overcome. A kid-friendly rapper can still work when the story raises the cost of failure and pays off with a hard-earned decisive win, but those steps did not land in sequence. Viewers labeled the act woke because empowerment language and classroom-style messaging took the foreground while the competitive path stayed vague. The stall came from structure, not sentiment. The title came before the climb, the matches did not create a hierarchy, and the arc never tied its message to a concrete chase against a specific opponent. Eva Marie Doudrop. Eva Marie returned in 2021 with influencer-style vignettes and a promised mentee. Piper Niven debuted as the in-ring athlete, was renamed Doudrop without an in-universe reason, and early wins were credited to Eva at ringside. Renaming a known wrestler and shifting credit to a non-wrestling character immediately cut credibility the audience uses to judge status and style. The act read as woke because image and empowerment framing sat in front of a sporting mission. The broadcast asked viewers to focus on presentation while the competitor doing the work carried a flippant nickname. The team never declared a pursuit the audience could track, such as a dated climb up the women's tag ladder. Without a stated target and timeline, weekly matches did not compound into visible momentum. Booking was stop-start, brief pushes, sudden turns, dropped feuds, and the partnership ended before a decisive payoff against a top opponent. In that pattern, progress could not be measured and resolution could not be anticipated. The core issue was misalignment between talent and story. The athlete's strengths were in-ring, while the angle centered a mentor's brand and a dismissive name. With no defined target, no sustained run of clean wins, and no final test to cash the story, the arc used airtime without producing a benchmark result. The New Day. The act launched in late 2014 as a high-energy trio built on the power of positivity with preacher-style promos, clapping chants, and bright matching gear. Segments led with motivational rhetoric and choir inflections which framed a feel-good message more than a competitive mission. Viewers labeled the early version woke because positivity and performance style took the foreground while the ring story lacked a named rival and a clear pursuit. With no declared ladder to climb and no weekly structure that moved wins toward a milestone, matches played like demonstrations rather than steps in a campaign. Early booking split momentum across short television bouts and crowd interaction spots that did not create a hierarchy. Opponents rotated quickly, wins did not stack into leverage, and the trio's danger levels stayed uncertain. The pivot replaced sermon tone with sharper character work, playful rule bending, and consistent victories over notable teams. Longer matches and stronger card slots and a sustained run with free-flowing team combinations turned personality into status. The message stayed in the background while competition led the story, which converted audience attention into credibility and made the act durable. Shorty G rebranded Chad Gable in 2019 as a self-esteem message about embracing height and turning insults into motivation. The name, varsity styling, and pep talk tone framed a feel-good lesson more than a competitive mission, which is why viewers labeled it woke when the sporting path stayed vague. The rename severed continuity with a decorated amateur standout, removing instant cues about suplex threat and mat control. When continuity is stripped, credibility has to be rebuilt through decisive wins over ranked opponents and a visible climb. That rebuild never happened, so the audience lacked new signals to recalibrate his status. Short TV bouts, even trades of wins and losses, and fast opponent swaps killed escalation. Without a sustained run or a signature feud that ended decisively, weekly segments did not compound into leverage. The core failure was misalignment between skill and story. A slogan and a belittling nickname sat on top of elite technique, and without a declared target plus a sustained run of clean wins, there was nothing to convert skill into status. The SmackDown Hacker. The SmackDown Hacker appeared in spring 2020 through distorted voiceovers, split-screen glitches, and a control room aesthetic built on surveillance-themed reveals. Promos promised truth and justice, framing a vigilante rather than a competitor with a defined chase, which is why viewers labeled it woke when the competitive aim stayed undefined. Targets rotated weekly. One reveal disrupted the Mandy Rose and Sonya Deville angle, then teases jumped elsewhere, so heat never concentrated on a single opponent. The exposés didn't trigger suspensions, title changes, or enforce stipulations, which meant nothing in-ring changed and leverage never formed. The eventual reveal tied the gimmick to Mustafa Ali months after the peak teases. The late reveal drained payoff energy, and folding it into a faction couldn't recover stakes because earlier beats never built one escalating feud with rising costs. The angle promised accountability but didn't convert information into power, didn't fix on one opponent long enough to escalate, and didn't set a dated challenge to force a finish. Information dumps without a path to a decisive match. Lacey Evans. Lacey Evans rebooted multiple times between 2020 and 2022 with vignettes about military service, hardship, and resilience. The segments used classroom-style inspiration and patriotic framing, which sold a role model image while leaving the competitive mission vague. Viewers labeled the presentation woke because empowerment and recovery language stayed in front, while the ring story offered no named rival or dated challenge to chase. Frequent tone shifts broke continuity. The character flipped between babyface and heel without finishing the prior arc, so each reset erased stakes and the audience lost the thread of why the next match mattered more than the last. Promos did not convert into leverage. Inspirational packages rarely attached stipulations, contender slots, or rule tweaks, so backstory did not change what happened in the ring, and nothing raised the cost of failure. Opponent focus rotated before escalation could form. Short TV matches, hard resets, and dropped pairings blocked a single feud from growing into a decisive test. The issue was structural, not thematic. The act asked for investment in service, struggle, and self-discipline while the booking offered no fixed target, no sustained run of clean wins, and no culminating match to validate the pitch. With competition never taking the lead, the message stayed in the foreground. If you enjoyed this breakdown and want more deep dives into wrestling's most shocking moments, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next one.